Research conducted by UNICEF estimates that more than 1 billion children across the globe are at risk of falling behind due to school closures which have been in place since last year and have been aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19. Here in Barbados, over the course of the last 18 months, the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training has used a blended learning approach, which involves a mix of virtual and face-to-face classes. As the island struggles with a spike in COVID-19 cases as a result of the highly contagious Delta variant, the start of the 2021 to 2022 school year has been fully online. On this one-on-one, we look at the challenges and the way forward for education. And a very good evening to you. I am Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the new Chief Education Officer, Dr. Romana Archer-Bradshaw. Chief, thank you so much for joining us.
You're most welcome. My pleasure to be here.
Now, first of all, tell me, who is Dr. Archer-Bradshaw?
Well, Dr. Archer-Bradshaw is a person who is very passionate about education. I've been in love with education for as long as I could remember, even my own education, starting from primary, secondary, all the way through to tertiary. And because of my love for learning, I have reached a high level, as you would say, in education. And my beginnings were very humble. And I believe that children who have humble beginnings can also aspire to become the best in Barbados, the best in the region, or even the best in the world. So this is the reason I'm so passionate about education, because I'm about providing opportunities for our children to realize their full potential.
Now, you've taken up this post at a very difficult time for education, and I believe you spent just over 20 years in the field, and things are very different now. I want to start by looking at the access to devices and to connectivity. Do more children have access now than when we first started?
Yes, a number of our children have access to devices. There were about 15,000 devices distributed over the course of the last academic year and this year. Mm-hmm. It is about closing that digital divide, ensuring that children can access the devices so they can access classes. Now, over the past couple weeks, we encountered a bit of an issue which we are trying to work through, because the number of requests for devices exceeded the number of devices that we had available at the Ministry of Education. We realized that the devices that were coming back into the ministry, many of them were indeed damaged. We realized that some of the devices were not returned, and as a result, the ministry had a shortfall. We are currently trying to remedy this situation. We have some MiFis present at the ministry, and the MiFis are devices that allow students without Wi-Fi at home to access the internet, and we are distributing those to the children in need. We also have some tablets, but we are indeed in need of more devices, and we are working on that at present to ensure that our children have access to education. It is at this time that I would encourage parents of those children who left school, let's say at the fifth form level, to return the devices if they have not done so. Because in returning the devices, you give opportunities to those coming into the school that don't have access to the devices. I would also ask parents to ensure that the children take care of the devices when they receive them. There is a loan contract that is signed when children get the devices, when the parents receive the devices. And the contract has on it that if there is damage to the device, then the parents will be required to pay. So when the children take care of the devices, it ensures access to those who don't have. And we want children to take care of the devices, and parents need to help us to enforce that.
And given that contract, are you going after those parents who have returned faulty devices or damaged devices?
Yes, there are some schools that are speaking with those parents, trying to make contact with the parents. But one of the issues that we're having at times is sometimes you can't reach the parents. So that is one of the major issues that we have.
No, every child comes from a different home environment, and some homes are not conducive for school in terms of noise and other distractions. Are you still getting a lot of complaints from your teachers regarding that situation?
No, I am not getting complaints about noise, but we do know that there are children who live in environments that are not conducive to learning. And one of the plans that we have moving forward is to ensure that those children can go to another space, for example, a community center or even a school, so that they can utilize that environment to engage in the act of learning. Because we are in this COVID-19 pandemic and the cases are rising as they are rising at present, we had taken the decision to wait until we have a safe environment for our children before we allow them to access. As usual, the Ministry of Education is guided by the Ministry of Health, and the guidance is that, it's not recommended that children go out to school at this time. And we continue to be guided by them. Yes, but I'm sure that when it is time and when it is safe for students to go back out, that we will ensure that those children are given an opportunity to access their learning.
And I want to go back to that point shortly about going back out to school, but I'll stick on this point for now. Some teachers are saying that children are not submitting homework or assignments, and when they do, they can clearly see that the child has not done it themselves. Somebody else is doing it.
Yes, I've heard about that at times. I wouldn't say that it is prevalent though, but it happens. Actually, it was happening even before teaching and learning in the online environment. And what I would encourage teachers to do is to engage in more in-class assignments so that they can see the full potential of the child, and to weigh more heavily what happens in class than what happens outside of class. You see, this whole business of education is one that requires the input from parents, teachers, students themselves, of course, members of the public. If we want our students to realize their full potential, if we want to see our students succeed, then we must put all of the mechanisms in place to ensure that that happens. When a parent does the homework for the child, it is doing that child a disservice. That child will not be able to develop the skills. They will not be able to acquire the knowledge that the teacher, in terms of the objectives that the teacher has set out. So, I would encourage parents, to desist from that kind of activity if it is happening. I would also, as I said earlier, encourage teachers to weigh more heavily what is in class than what is done outside of the classroom.
And speaking about weighing more heavily on what is done in class, I'm also hearing that attendance levels, they're low. In terms of, one teacher told me she was expecting 15 students to log on to her class, only 3 logged on. Are you having reports of poor attendance, with children probably being out in Bridgetown, for instance, instead of being online at school?
The reports now are not as they were in the past. But what I can say is that the Ministry of Education has a mechanism in place to track those children who are not attending school.
Tell me more.
The teachers are supposed to report to the principals non-attendance. That report leaves the school and goes to the Ministry of Education and is directed to the Student Support Services section. And they have school attendance officers who check up on these children, who make calls to the home. Sometimes they even drive to the houses to find out exactly why the children are not attending. Yes? So we have a mechanism in place to track, to see what is happening. Because sometimes when you don't see children in class, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're skipping. They may have an issue with the device. It may be that their environment is not one that helps the learning. So we need to investigate those issues and be able to remedy them.
And you also had a situation where a number of children were in isolation facilities as well, and they would have missed school based on where they were not having internet access, etc. Have any provisions been put in place to help them to catch up?
Not at present, but I can tell you that we are working towards it. If they don't have the Wi-Fi, I am certain that MiFis can be made available to them that they can access as well.
Your special needs students, how are they coping?
Our special needs students are coping quite well based on reports. I can tell you that our teachers in that particular area have been accessing professional development courses to help them use the online environment to teach. I understand that last year we had exceptional special needs teachers, while there were others who were struggling a bit in terms of reaching their children. What we've done this time around is that we have developed a community of practice for special needs teachers. So they have opportunities to access workshops, courses, they share materials, because in this environment, it is very difficult to do it alone. And when you can share ideas and you can share practices and you can share these resources, it makes it much easier. So that program is ongoing as we speak.
And teachers are saying that they're burnt out. They're saying that parents are sending emails at all hours during the night and expecting instant responses. Are you getting those reports?
No, I haven't received those reports. What I can say, though, is that the teachers have done a commendable job in adapting during this pandemic. They have had to transition from the face-to-face to the online, and they have done well. Generally, they have done well in making that transition. You see, when you recognize why you are doing what you're doing, you do what you have to do. And the teachers generally have put their best foot forward. I can say also that the teachers have been accessing training from the beginning of last year through Earlyston Teachers Training College in the use of technologies, how they can use various software to help their children to understand concepts. And I thought that that was very commendable. They continue to do so even as we speak. There's an ongoing program with the Tampere University in Finland through IDB. And we have just about 100 teachers accessing that. Yes? So these programs will continue. I'm sure that Earlyston Teachers Training College will continue to host programs for our teachers as well. And I think once the teachers' hearts are in the right place, they will do what they have to do. And I have great faith in our teachers. I really do. There's some, of course, that, need a little help. And where we can help them, we will do so. But I can tell you that many of our teachers go above and beyond the call of duty to ensure that our children learn. Some people see between 9 and 3 or between 9 and 1 and think that that's it for teachers. That's not so. Good teachers, they teach during that time. But to teach during that time, they have to prepare long before. They have to know the diverse abilities of the children in the classroom and how they're going to cater to little Susie today to help Susie to understand. When the class is finished, they have work to correct. You see, and they correct that so they can give the feedback the following day. So the teacher's job is one that requires a lot of stamina, and I can see why some may feel a little tired, but we do it with love. We do it with love, and I would want the public to understand really what teachers go through on a daily basis and what they have to do in order to ensure that our children learn.
And speaking about catering to those who may have fallen behind, what is the ministry doing to aid those children who continue to struggle in an online environment?
One of the major things I spoke about during the press conference a few weeks ago, and I also shared it with the principals, is to ensure that there is diagnostic testing. For too long, we have been an exam-driven society. We've been teaching to the exam. We try to cover content because we want to ensure the children understand the content and that we cover what is called the syllabus. I want us to change that mindset. I want a paradigm shift to occur. I want us to recognize it is about teaching the children in front of us and not only preparing them for an exam, but preparing them for life. If we use that approach, then children will not fall behind so easily. They will not fall behind so easily. There's a quote that I like, I think it's by Osborne, and he speaks about the fact that when children do exams, they're forced to march across an educational landscape without being given time to stop and stare. We want children to value the experiences that they have in the classroom and use those experiences to navigate their life, because eventually they will become contributing citizens in this society. And when we teach, when we lead, when we parent, we always have to remember that our children will become contributing citizens in our society. So when you do their homework as parents, you're doing them a disservice. As teachers, if you don't teach in a way that you diagnose their difficulties, you are wasting your time. As leaders, if you don't lead in a way that you implement some programs and policies for your children, then what are we doing? We always have to bear in mind that these children are our future.
In your first address as chief last month, you had mentioned that there would be a review of the current curriculum and that the entire syllabus for each term could not be taught. Has this happened? Because I'm hearing different things, that each school might be doing something different.
For the past year, because of the pandemic, I had to take most of my classes online. I would rather be at school. I miss interacting with my teachers and friends. I want to be vaccinated. Getting vaccinated can help protect me, my teachers, friends, and family from COVID-19. I also understand that even when vaccinated, I must continue to keep my guard up by washing my hands with soap and water frequently, wearing my mask properly by covering my nose and mouth, and avoiding crowds. Vaccines are safe and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
For the past year, because of the pandemic, I had to take most of my classes online. I would rather be at school. I miss interacting with my teachers and friends. I want to be vaccinated. Getting vaccinated can help protect me, my teachers, friends, and family from COVID-19. I also understand that when vaccinated, I must continue to keep my guard up by washing my hands with soap and water frequently, wearing my mask properly, by covering my nose and mouth, and avoiding crowds. Vaccines are safe and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
In your first address as chief last month, you had mentioned that there would be a review of the current curriculum and that the entire syllabus for each term could not be taught. Has this happened? Because I'm hearing different things, that each school might be doing something different.
Well, no, each school isn't doing something different. Each school received the new syllabus before the term began. Each school Each principal and subsequently the teachers should be very clear about what should be taught during the academic year. What we did with those existing syllabuses is that we extracted the information that may be extraneous, because there are some things that children don't necessarily have to know. So we pulled out the germane topics, we packaged those topics, and we said, well, okay, this is what our students should be doing for class 1, this is what they should be doing for class 2, class 3, class 4, right? Even infants. Yes? So all schools have that information, and all schools should be abiding by that.
So the syllabus content has been reduced.
It has been reduced.
Okay.
It has been reduced. There is no way, Lisa, that we can teach all of the content that we taught before, before the online.
Right.
No. We don't want to put undue pressure on our students, nor do we want to put undue pressure on our teachers.
They're already under pressure.
They're already under pressure. You see, so we had to relook the curriculum and pull out those things, those core areas that our children need to know, and focus on them.
You mentioned moving away from this exam-driven sense of education. Given the challenges last year and this year with the 11+ examination, are you comfortable that as chief, that an alternative to this exam can be in place for the current class 4 students?
I can tell you that we are working on it. The Education Reform Unit is working on the alternative for the 11+ exam. When that alternative is ready, we will come to the public and we will share that information.
Okay, so therefore you're not telling me if that will be possible by 2022.
When I say things, I like to ensure that I deliver.
Okay.
Okay? So if at this point, all I can tell you is that when that information becomes available, we will share it with the public.
No, there's no vaccine as yet for those under the age of 12. However, we are vaccinating those in the 12 to 18 age group. Does the ministry have a specific target in terms of percentage of vaccinations in mind for us to return to face-to-face classes?
Yes. We are currently developing a roadmap for when we go back to the face-to-face mode of teaching. And that roadmap speaks to a percentage vaccination rate for teachers and other members of staff, and also for students, those who can be vaccinated. Right now, as it stands, we're looking at about 70% vaccination for our students and about 70% vaccination for our teachers as well. For those children who cannot be vaccinated, it is the same 70% for the teachers. But what we will do, we are looking at increasing the physical distance between them, seeing that they can't be vaccinated. Yes? So vaccination is one part of it. The other part of it is testing. We are also considering regular testing. So we are right now working out all of the kinks as they relate to testing and vaccinations and so on. But I can tell you that when we do go back face-to-face, it is about making the environment as safe as possible. Because we know the Delta variant is highly transmissible. And we don't know which other variants are going to come are also highly transmissible. We know that while the online environment is the environment that is in use now, we have to look to see what we can do to make it even better, make education even better, so that we can cater to all of the needs of our children. Online, we know there's that digital divide. We are working really hard to close it. We are working really hard to close it. There are some children who are not accessing classes as they should. If we can go back to face-to-face with elements of online, I think it will serve our children well.
So you don't think the online element is going anywhere anytime soon?
When you say not going anywhere, what do you mean?
In terms of the blended approach that we had tried earlier, in terms of
Yes.
face-to-face and online learning.
Yeah, we can use face-to-face and online.
Okay.
You know, even if we go back full face-to-face, there is still a place for online.
Okay.
You see, within the classroom. And it happened even before the pandemic. We had teachers at primary and secondary schools utilizing the blended approach, even though children were in class every day, face-to-face. Students will do online activities, be in groups, and they will do online activities. You have teachers utilizing the flipped classroom, where children will go home on evenings and do the homework, and in terms of doing the homework, read up on various topics and so on. And when they come back into the classroom now, instead of learning the material there in the physical space, they're able to discuss, share, critically think, evaluate, analyze, synthesize, all of these things children were doing before. And I can see that coming back, where we have a mix of the online and the blended. The online environment, this environment is working very well for some children, but it isn't working very well for some others, even though they have access.
Right.
So we have to be able to cater to all of the needs of our children by providing them with various opportunities and various modalities for learning.
You mentioned that you're looking to hit a target of 70% in terms of teachers and other school staff being vaccinated. What number are you at now?
Right now, in terms of the students, we have just over 8,000 students vaccinated out of approximately 21,000 students. So we're not at the halfway mark as yet. So I encourage those students between 12 and 18, if you can be vaccinated, please go out and be vaccinated, because it offers another layer of protection. We've been wearing our masks. We've been physically distancing. We've been washing our hands. We've been sanitizing. The vaccine is here now as another layer. So why not take it? Yes? The sooner we reach our threshold, the better we will be able to ensure that our children have various modes of accessing their education. We can have face-to-face and we can have the online.
You mentioned the number of students, but the number of teachers.
Right. We are working on the number of teachers at present to determine what percentage. We don't have that number as yet.
Okay. Now, let's move away from COVID for a bit and look at the coding and robotics program, of which I understand you're a champion. How has that rollout been across the schools, given the challenges that we're seeing at the moment?
Yes. Well, we have started with the coding because that can be done online very, very easily. There are a number of schools that have already begun to roll out the coding. The interest is there. Students are excited at the opportunities that can come with coding. Remember, we start with the very basic levels, which would be the Scratch, what you call the Scratch program, utilize that. And children have been having a ball with that. And what's good about it is the fact that they have fun while learning. They don't even realize that they're learning things because they're having so much fun. Lisa, what I can tell you also is that the teachers who were trained, that was a wonderful indication of the success that we would have in the schools. The teachers were passionate. They were doing their homework, they were coming back, and they were sharing with each other, and they developed a community as well, that we could share materials. Yes? So that program so far has been going quite well, the coding aspect of it. Of course, the robotics requires face-to-face interaction, so that is on pause for now until we're able to go back face-to-face. But I must say that so far, so good. We're getting some good results, especially at the secondary level. At the primary level, we've paused on that because they were the last to be trained in this area. So we've paused on that a bit, but we will implement that pretty soon. We have a number of robotic skits for primary school children. We have the VEX 1, 2, 3. We have the VEX Go. And I'm sure that when we get back into the face-to-face environment, that our children will have a ball learning with those as well.
The Wilkie Cumberbatch Primary School. Almost $3 million has been allocated to do extensive repairs there. Can you provide an update at this time as to the work?
Yes, we are making progress in terms of the repairs. We are working towards having the plant completed by the time we open up for face-to-face school. In the meantime, we have identified some alternative sites just in case, something comes up and we don't get a chance to finish. But the Cumberbatch Primary School for the Ministry of Education, I must say, is a priority. It is.
Okay, the work at that school is estimated to last about 12 weeks. I know that there might be some challenges here and there. However, you said in case we don't get a chance to finish, could we return to face-to-face classes before next term?
There is a possibility. If we have high levels of vaccination across the student body and the teacher body, if we have testing, then there is a very real possibility that we can reopen.
Okay. Now, several other schools are also undergoing some upgrades in a bid to get them in a position to be more technologically ready. Where are we in terms of those upgrades?
The Ministry of Education embarked on the electrical upgrades recently, and we've completed them. There were about 7 schools, and we've completed them because we recognize that if we want to introduce coding and robotics and we want to have technology in the schools, we need to have Wi-Fi. So we have a electrical upgrade. That has been completed, and we are currently embarking on the fence-to-fence program, ensuring that these schools have internet connectivity. There are just over 10 schools in that fence-to-fence program, and so far the work is progressing very well. So I know that when the children go back out to school and the teachers go back out to school, they'll be quite happy that they have a functioning internet and they have good internet connectivity. And I must say it's a phased approach. So those schools I just spoke about, that's the phase 1, right? We're looking at addressing other schools as the time progresses.
You spent about a decade at the Edison Teachers Training College. Is teaching still a profession that is attracting our young, bright minds?
Very much so. Very much so. We have, when I say we now, I'm going to put on the Edison hat, but I'm speaking as the Chief Education Officer in charge of those departments. But Edison, we have a program called the Bachelor of Education program, and every year there are a number of teachers, a number of persons, I mean not say teachers, a number of persons who try to get into that program to become teachers. Teaching is a very noble profession. And I think in Barbados we understand that. From the time I was a child, I'm talking from my experience, I basically worship my teachers. I was so surprised one day when I saw one of my teachers in the supermarket. I thought, wait, teachers go to the supermarket? Because teachers were like gods.
Yeah.
Yes? I must say that over the years, that hasn't changed very much. And I said very much. It hasn't changed very much. People still respect teachers. Generally, Barbadians still respect teachers. And young people coming up, and I love to hear them speak, especially those entering the programs at Edison. I really love children, so I want to go and help children. And they're passionate. So I wouldn't say that it is a dying profession. I would not say that at all. There are still people out there who are interested in teaching because they understand that in teaching a child, the impact on that child, the impact that a teacher can have on that child is so great, and they want to be able to make a difference. And that is what teaching is about, making a difference.
Since taking over as chief and obviously being in the field for more than 2 decades, what are your views on the level of behavior we're seeing in schools across the island?
Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get celebration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function. Remove outdoor objects. Make sure that you went to the ATM. Stock up with water. Make sure you clean the guttering lot. What about canned food? Make sure you got some stock up in your room. Make sure you prop up the paling and tie down the roof. Let me start to prepare real soon. Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get celebration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function.
Vaccines have both protected and kept children healthy from serious illnesses such as whooping cough, measles, crippling diseases like polio, and others. Vaccines help your immune system to do its job better and faster, and that protects you from serious disease. Like a good security guard, the immune system is always on patrol in your body, looking for invading germs. When it comes across a germ, it begins releasing antibodies to fight that germ. These antibodies work to attack, weaken, and destroy the germ. The COVID-19 vaccine is no different. It will work to help your immune system fight COVID effectively. All vaccines go through strict trials before they are approved for use in the population. Even after the COVID-19 vaccines are approved for use in the general population, monitoring for safety continues. Vaccines are safe, and they work.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Pan American Health Organization.
Since taking over as chief and obviously being in the field for more than 2 decades, what are your views on the level of behavior we're seeing in schools across the island?
I find nowadays, and I'm generally speaking because I have not conducted any research,
Right.
that children are not as respectful as they were in the past. The values are not what they used to be in the past. And I think based on that, there is a need for us at the level of the ministry, at the level of the school, at the level of the church, at the level of the home, to ensure that values take priority. Let's talk about the school. When children go into the school, it shouldn't only be about teaching the content. Whenever a child sits down to learn whatever subject it is, that child should be exposed to what it really means to be a Barbadian, what it really means to be respectful, what it really means to be someone that can contribute positively to their classroom and by extension, their society. I don't even see it as being taught as a values being taught as a specific subject. It can be, but I think it should be infused in each lesson because there's a saying that values are caught and not taught. Yeah? So that's it in terms of the school. At the level of the parent, I think parents need to parent. Don't leave it up to the school or the teacher to do it for you. You, as a parent, need to set your standards and to say, well, this is not right, that is not right, and give the teacher and the school the support that it needs to help your child to grow into a proper citizen. So I think generally there is a decline in the values, and this is something that we need to arrest, because what good is a child who has all of the knowledge in the world, but that child uses that knowledge for bad? It's no good. So we need to focus on values even more.
And I know that Minister Bradshaw is big on getting the parent-teachers associations to be more active at the various schools. Have you had any success where that's concerned?
Of course. From the time that I went to the ministry, I've been engaging stakeholders. And the NCPTA is one that we have engaged, and we've been asking them to assist us in formalizing parent-teacher associations across schools in Barbados. We've also spoken with the principals, and we shared with them the importance of having active PTAs, because we want people in Barbados to recognize that education does not belong to the Ministry of Education alone. Education belongs to you, Lisa. It belongs to me. It belongs to the parents. It belongs to the teachers, principal, the general public. Yes, so we need everybody to be on board. But the PTAs, they're coming along, and I'm very proud and very happy with the progress that we're making in that area.
We find it easy to get into a primary school, a secondary school. But when we hit tertiary level education, that sometimes presents a challenge. We're still hearing that people are having trouble accessing spaces at either the BCC or the SJPI. What is being done to help that situation?
I am not aware of the difficulty in accessing spaces. When you speak about accessing spaces, what do you mean?
In terms of enough spaces to get into a particular program at the institutions.
Right. Well, I know at these institutions there are limits, because we have to bear in mind the human resource, those persons who have to teach. We have to bear in mind the class sizes and so on, and that will be the limitation. But I am sure that with the number of tertiary institutions that we have across the island, we have the BCC, we have SJPI, we have the University of the West Indies, that there is space for those persons who have the qualifications and who are really desirous of pursuing further studies. Yeah, so I in terms of not having enough space, as I said, limited by human resource, limited by the number of persons that can be in a class, especially now in this COVID-19 environment. So that's all I can say about that at this time.
We had a number of schools that expanded and had 6 forms added. Are there any plans to expand the number of schools that do have 6 forms?
That is a possibility. In terms of the structure of our school system, that is under heavy consideration at the moment by the Education Reform Unit, and that structure will also be shared in a timely manner.
This is Education Month. What is your vision for education in Barbados as the chief?
My vision for education is that we continue to live up to the mission of the Ministry of Education, and that is to ensure that we have equitable access to education. Number 2, to ensure that we create opportunities for children to be responsible, to be creative, to be industrious. In essence, for children to reach their full potential. That is my vision. So everything else that we do at the ministry is aligned to that. From that, you will have teacher training if you want our children to be creative and to be industrious. We have to ensure that our teachers create opportunities for our children to be that. And children don't wake up one morning and become creative and industrious. It has to start from a very, very young age. So we have to create opportunities for our teachers to train so that they can approach education in that kind of way. In terms of stakeholder engagement, if we want children indeed to realize their potential, we got to make sure that the parents are on board. We have to make sure that corporate Barbados is on board. We have to make sure that the general public, principals, everybody is on board.
Besides COVID, what has been the greatest challenge in the Ministry of Education?
Within the Ministry of Education, we continue to look at ways that we can pivot. COVID, yes, caused us to pivot. And people talk about devices and so on. But the theme for Education Month is Education Reimagined. And that goes beyond COVID. We are not only reimagining because of COVID. What we have to do generally is to have a kind of shift in our thinking. We move from what we thought education should be to providing mechanisms to get our students to be prepared for the future. That is the biggest challenge, and that is what we are working on, to get that paradigm shift that is needed, preparing our students for the future. Systems, there are some systems that work well in the past, but there are other systems that we need to change.
Such as?
We have to look at modes of assessment. We have to look at monitoring and evaluation. We have to look at appraisal. We have to look at promotion within the teaching service. We have to look at providing opportunities for children in the technical and vocational areas. We have to look at inclusion when it comes to special needs. We have to place greater focus on physical education within our schools. We have to ensure that we just spoke about values, Lisa. Ensure that we teach values throughout. And to ensure that teachers are teaching values throughout. Again, it comes back to monitoring and evaluation. We have to look at leadership. What is it that we really want from our leaders? The leadership of any institution should provide the direction for the institution. And if the leader is not doing what he or she is supposed to do in terms of providing that direction, then the school will not be as effective as it can be. So there are a number of things that we have to rethink. And we can't approach all at the same time. We have to prioritize. But we have our list, and we are working towards creating those mechanisms that could ensure that our children are prepared for the future. I began this interview by telling you that for me, it is about the children. And I know we're coming to an end. For me, it's about the children. And we will do what we have to do to make sure that these children that we have today are prepared for the future.
Chief, thank you so much for talking to us. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. It was indeed my pleasure chatting with you as well.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to more opportunities to share.
Indeed, I'm sure we will have over the course of your tenure.
Thank you.
That was the new Chief Education Officer, Dr. Romana Archer-Bradshaw. I am Lisa Lord, and this was One on One.